Welcome to Out of the Ordinary with Jay, and I am with
Mike Dyer.
And Mike, you are an attorney, right?
I am.
Okay, so I've got all these questions about lawyering. My first question is, I've always wondered, is it better to say attorney or lawyer? Or is there a difference, or like, what does it mean? Like,
I think in this industry, most of us have been called a lot worse, so either of those are interchangeable.
that's great. So they are, so some people say lawyer, some people say attorney. It really is the same thing, no
Same
difference.
thing. Mm-hmm.
And not one is offensive,
Correct.
unless we really try hard.
Yeah,
Maybe.
let me
Okay.
tell you.
Okay, so what type of lawyer are you?
I would probably
A good one?
describe myself as definitely not that. No.
Oh, stop.
Transactional. I do mainly transactional types of areas of the law. I do a lot of trust and wills and estate planning, elder law. Do a lot of small business planning,
Oh,
things of that nature. So don't do a lot of litigation. That's probably the.
is that what it's called? Is that like the term transactional attorney? Is that that's a
when
category?
You're doing a lot more paper pushing and things of that nature than you are in the courtroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever go to the courtroom or no?
Mhm.
Oh, you do?
I do a fair amount of it. I think just the majority of my practice is much more transactional. So I probably I maybe have 2 or 3 trials a year that are maybe 1 to 2 days. So
Oh, that's not too bad.
not huge, not like some of your trial attorneys that will have 3-week trials, 2-week trials.
Right, some of the ones you see on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Definitely. So.
And how long have you been practicing as a lawyer or attorney?
Let's see, I think it's about 26 years now. 26, 27.
Okay. So my next question is, why haven't you learned your lesson? No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
I'm just kidding.
Some people are just too dense.
No, stop. But so 26 years, almost getting close to 3 decades
Mm-hmm.
of being a lawyer. Before we go on any further, I just want to say nothing in here is legal advice. Nothing in here is advice at all for that matter. So anyways, still enjoy the interview. I want to ask you, is it hard work being an attorney?
It depends. And what I would say it depends on, just based upon my experiences, whether or not you enjoy the area that you're practicing in. So I consider myself pretty blessed. I just enjoy the area that I practice in very much. It's very satisfying. You actually get to help people, and people appreciate your participation in resolving issues and bringing answers to them. So I don't think it's necessarily too difficult. I think sometimes when you enjoy any job too much, you end up putting a bunch of time into it, and that's what I've found to be true for me, is just the amount of time that I spend. Work-life balance is always fun for anybody. So.
Well, I know some other lawyers that I know, and especially in the early parts of their career, most of them didn't like it very much. In fact, some of them quit and then came back later because they came out of law school with all these ideas of what they're going to do, and then they were put right into the grind, or go get mega billable hours, go chase cars and find accidents. You know what I mean? And they really, it was not what they had envisioned their life being, and they really got burnt out in some cases quite quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's why I say it really depends upon the area of law that you're in and really what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, I think, in several instances, the area of law that you find yourself in, if you're there to make a lot of money and that's what your goal is, and then when you get paid by the hour, then that you've got to put the hours in to make the amount of money that you desire. And so I can understand how, and learning a particular area of law, it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. You go through law school, you go through 3 years of law school, and they teach you the basics. They teach you enough to at least understand generally what the various areas of law are. They expose you to them, but you don't know what you're doing for many years after that. So So it really, it's like anything else.
Yeah, how long would you say, that's a uh, good thing that you mentioned, or interesting. How long would you say it would take for someone to like hit their stride? Like, how many years of being
I would
on
say
practice?
that, from, in my
Outside of law
opinion,
school.
I think it takes at least, to have a decent understanding of a particular area of law, it takes at least 2 to 3 years of practicing in a particular area to become what I would suggest would be competent. Now, it doesn't mean competent in the very, very complicated, that's just competent in understanding and
Right,
being able
I'm
to push
proficient in this
through.
area enough to know what's going on and
Right.
deal.
Mm-hmm. That's about what we expect for, new associates that are learning a new area and being exposed to it, is by the second or third year, they should be able to carry cases on their own
Okay.
and work them up, and then come back for the more complex portions of it. So,
Okay. All right.
a lot of mentorship and a lot of stuff goes along with that.
Yeah, I would imagine it seems very much like the medical field, the doctor. You know what I mean? You come in kind of great, you've got the knowledge, you know the vocabulary,
Yep.
and then you've got to put it into practice. In which, not coincidentally, they're both called practices: a law practice and a medical practice. So, anyways, interesting.
Yeah.
What is a common misconception about your profession, would you say?
I think probably one of the most common misconceptions that affects everybody is really how quickly the law moves, and I attribute that to so many of your, our favorite legal shows, whether I date myself and say LA Law, or some of the newer ones like Suits, or you have Law and Order, you have all these various shows that cover portions of the legal system, but they have to be wrapped up in 45 minutes. So a lot of folks have, a notion that justice and the law moves at a speed that it normally doesn't. So that's very frustrating, and I think it's something that you learn very quickly. If you're going to be successful as an attorney, you really have to make sure that you set client expectations appropriately, and that you make sure that they understand the timelines that are involved in their case, and that you make sure you regularly update them.
Yeah, you're right. Because like in real life, especially some of the more complex cases, I mean, they take years and years.
Yeah, especially like, probably the areas that people would experience most often are things like, a car accident and a personal injury matter, or if you're a property owner and someone gets injured on your property, how long insurance claims and lawsuits take to make their way through the process. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes time, and that's and a lot of times it's very frustrating, especially when you see a lot of the commercials too.
Right. You mentioned about car accidents and slipping and falling or whatever on your property or whatever, and I know that's not necessarily your field of practice, but one piece of advice that you gave me specifically that I found wonderful, maybe some of the best advice I'd ever heard from a financial perspective, and probably a lot of people know about this, but I didn't, which is crazy because I was in the business even, is an umbrella policy. I had no idea. Would you mind just saying kind of quickly what an umbrella policy is and why you think it's important?
Sure. I think, insurance, and I think this will tell you that how far I am from being an insurance agent, but I think, insurance agents, when you start asking them for suggestions as to how much insurance you need, well, when you ask a salesperson how much you need, then normally they're going to tell you, well, how much can you afford? Right. So I think an umbrella policy is one of those things, especially if folks have assets to protect. It's the cheapest insurance often that you can buy that protects your individual liability. So when you have car insurance, I always recommend to folks that are trying to protect their assets that they seek what the limit is that's necessary to protect their cars, that they're comfortable with, and then once you get to the amount that is required for an umbrella just basically protects your house, protects your cars, over and above the liability that's covered in your homeowners and your automobile insurance if you're found to be liable for some sort of, injury.
Yeah,
And so it's, like I said, for $1 million or $2 million, I think you found something similar.
Oh,
What I
man.
had suggested is that it's the most reasonable insurance premiums that you'll find.
yeah, I mean, I think for my umbrella policy, it's like, it's been a while, but it might be like $500 a year. I mean, or $600 a year. Like, it's very insignificant. And I would say, anybody that has anything to protect, it doesn't even have to be, that much. If you've got anything protected, and then also that's the other thing too, like with the autos in the home and stuff. Once you're already in it this far for this amount of coverage, the delta to like increase your coverage is not very much money. So you might as well, and then adding the umbrella to it. Anyway, I just found that to be a great personal piece of advice. So thanks for that. Why do you think attorneys get a bad rap?
I think attorneys get a bad rap because attorneys are, by design and by education, they're challenged to be able to argue both sides of a particular issue. And I think that oftentimes is translated to mean that they're not passionate about one or the other, or they don't have opinions on one or the other because
They're blood-sucking leeches.
Because of that. That's exactly it. See, that's the bad name.
Because sharks do not have emotion.
That's right. I don't have a heart doctor for a reason. Why do I need a heart doctor? I'm a lawyer.
You're making the case that the lawyers are people.
Yeah. It's a misnomer.
Okay.
So, but I think that's part of it. I also think that, whether we like it or not, everything in this world has gotten more expensive, right? And the law is no different. It's very expensive to go through a legal case in which, if you're being sued to defend it, or if you're bringing a lawsuit, whether it's a business dispute or otherwise, lawyer rates are they're high, and it represents the world. I mean, it's not like we haven't had increases in our cost of living, but it just makes it more difficult too. So I think that lends to it as well.
Right, people are lying. Right, I was wondering too. I've only been involved in a little bit of legal stuff, and I never liked it. But it seems to me, and maybe you can correct the record on this, is most issues between people or between companies or disputes don't really see the light of day in a courtroom. Aren't most of them mediated or settled outside of the courtroom?
Absolutely.
What percent would you say?
I have to think that somewhere in the high 80 to 90% of cases are settled outside of the law. I think, the process itself, I think that you couple what people's expectations are for a resolution, right? And as I alluded to before, a lot of people will come in with the expectation that their case is going to be, all the discovery is going to be done, all the pleadings are going to be filed, and the judge is going to rule within 60 days or 90 days. And the reality is, as you had said earlier, the average case, let's say large injury case, I mean, those average cases take at least 1.5 years, 2 years to resolve. And so if you think about it, you have someone that's significantly injured, let's just say, and this isn't my area of law, this is just what I observe, but you have someone that's injured in a particular car accident, and it's not their fault. So it takes time for them to go through all of the medical procedures, all the rehabilitation, months and months and months to recover. Well, you can't make a claim for their injuries until their injuries have resolved.
Right.
So those months and months of rehabilitation and getting, back up to full health is a delay in them receiving what might be an outcome to help them. So I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, it seems the one thing that it seems to me, based on my own little bit of experience, is that people think they should sue or grab an attorney every time they're wronged.
Mhm.
And I think that's a good impulse to have. But I think the large majority of the time, you
Yeah.
might be not doing yourself a favor. It might be just perpetuating a problem and making it bigger.
Yeah, and I think a part of good lawyering sometimes is just explaining to the client or potential client that the legal system is not set up to get them what they're looking for. It just would not.
What is it set up for?
Taking someone's money when the outcome is not going to be what they're seeking often is just not a good resolution. And sometimes you have to protect the clients from themselves.
That I can totally see, because I can see, especially in like cases where someone's felt wrong, there would definitely be an emotional aspect. I mean, almost certainly they would.
And especially,
I want justice.
right, and we see it a lot, at least in the area that we deal with when there's disputes, is between family members.
Oh, sure.
Once you
that sounds cool.
hire attorneys between family members, you'll never ever have a relationship most often with that family member again. So,
Factor that in.
You have to be honest with your clients. Well, if you really want me to write your brother that letter, I will. But please understand that things will never return to normal if that's what your expectation is.
Wow. That
So
makes sense. What's funny is it sounds so obvious when you say it, but if you're the client, you're needy, been feeling wronged,
you're in it.
Yeah. You may have already answered this, but I'm gonna ask the question anyways because it's on my list.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing you wish people knew about hiring an attorney?
Oh, that's a really good question. It's really interesting because hiring an attorney has really changed even over the almost 30 years that I've been in this business, is because it used to be word of mouth. You would go to someone, friend, family, or otherwise, and you'd say, hey, I've got this problem, do you know of an attorney? And that was where you would get the majority of your referrals. Well, I think we all know the first place we turn for a recommendation of anybody is magic fingers or thumbs on a phone, right? So,
hey Siri.
Yeah. So that I think has really changed the face of how you derive business. And I think it's difficult because you had asked, how long does it take for an attorney to become proficient? Right. And a lot of times we'll see a particular attorney that you've never heard of. I'm not trying to brag in anything of that nature, but when you practice 30 years in one particular area, you kind of know the names of folks in town or even in the state that practice in this area significantly. And so when you see a name you don't recognize, like, I wonder who that is. And I mean, they hit the right SEO or they have the right marketing group that puts them at the top of the list, and then you'll see them, they'll get a bunch of cases that they don't know how to handle because they're new, they're just starting out, they just hung up their shingle, and they are, they're well in over their heads. And so if I had a recommendation, I would go back to, the best recommendations are ones from people that word of mouth. I think that's a good place to start.
And so, like, if I didn't have a word of mouth, say I had some issue that I needed an attorney for, and nobody in my immediate family knew of an attorney. If I'm hearing what you're saying, your opinion would be, it might be better, instead of just doing a Google search and seeing who paid the most for that first AdWord to show up, it might be better to go to your own Facebook page and say, hey, this happened to me, I'm looking for an attorney, does anybody have any recommendations? Because then at least there's something behind it. Would you say, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If I had to choose, if I was choosing an attorney, that would be one particular resource. I think another particular resource, depending upon what the area of practice that you're talking about. I mean, obviously if it's personal injury or something like that, you're going to get the run of advertisements. But if it's something like a business dispute or there's a particular area of business that you're in, a lot of times you can go to different lawyer groups that focus in that area. So I'll give you an example that's particular to my area, but if someone's looking for, let's say your parents live out of state and all the referrals that you're getting are for attorneys in Arizona, and your parents live in Indiana, and you want to try and find an elder law attorney for them in Indiana, in the town they're in, then you try and find a practice group like the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, NALA, okay, they go by the acronym. But if you got on NALA.org and you typed in Indiana and the town they live in, they'll come up with a number of attorneys that focus on that area. And yeah, you know, there's no test that you have to take and you have to pay money to be a part of this group, but most people just don't pay money to these academic type groups. That's not directed towards advertising. Right. There are folks that are interested legitimately in this area. And so whatever the area is that you're looking for, if it's particular to a state, or you're out of state, or it's a topic area, that may also be a nice way for you to get some referrals that are particular, so that you're not getting someone who thinks that they can do all different types of things but not be good or focused on any one.
Which sort of a summary of this might be, if you're needing to find legal representation, if it's important, you should try to qualify it as much as you can, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's basically the idea.
Yeah, and
to the extent that you can.
And I would also say that, you know, I say this to many of my clients, you know, I don't, in my particular area, I don't charge a initial consultation fee, because I tell the clients up front, you know, I want to enjoy my representation of the client as much as I want the client to have trust and confidence in the relationship with me. And I would submit to folks that are trying to find an attorney that you don't have to hire the first one you go to. And sometimes it's worth paying an initial consultation fee just to make sure that there's someone you like. And if you only interview one, then you really have nothing to compare it to. And if you have the time to do it, and the matter is important enough to you, then maybe you interview an attorney or two. Because that relationship, most matters take more than just one meeting or two meetings.
I never thought about it that way, but the way when you were saying that, the way it translated into my mind was, okay, let's say I'm going to go buy a house, which is a significant thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, I might want to get a home inspection. And even if I pay $750 order for the home inspection, and I really want the house, if the home inspection comes back and says, hey, there's some problems with this house, maybe I just write off the $750 and move on.
Right.
Right?
That's
exactly
it's a good
it. Parallel?
Yeah, that's okay. Very much so. You know.
Cool. Okay, so what is the best part about being an attorney? What do you like? Or
I would say that how I would answer that question is I enjoy the people. I'm not a research and writing attorney. I know that there are jobs like that. I had one when I first got out of college or law school. It was all research and writing, and you never saw the client. It was with the court system, and you know, you were researching and writing for orders for judges, and I knew at that point in time I could never do that. So to me, my favorite part of being an attorney is the clients that you see and the clients you're able to help. That's what makes the job for me.
That's super cool. But what you just brought up made me think that I never thought about this before, but the job you just described, you could actually be an introvert attorney, right? I mean, there's a place for them too, doing the research and...
Absolutely.
Wow, I never thought about that.
Academic
because you know, when you think of attorneys, you always think they're out,
right?
You know, doing things. But okay,
Yeah.
What's the worst part about being an attorney? Let's go the other way.
I'd probably say, at least in my area, the worst part about being an attorney is the billing. Is, you know, having to charge a fair fee to clients is sometimes difficult. Justice is expensive, and the amount of time sometimes you have to put in cases that, especially, I mean, the example in my area is that there's, you know, when you're fighting over a will or what, you know, has been left to folks, there's always a lot of sentimental items. You know, they may not have a lot of value, like if you sold them, it's not like a piece of real estate, but maybe it was mom's favorite ring, it was dad's gold watch from retirement, or his pocket knife that he had gotten from his father. You know, your client wants to battle on those things, and what you have to charge to battle on them by far outstrips the value of the item.
You
But
could buy 3 watches
yeah,
instead of just having the one.
well, a lot more than 3.
Or whatever,
So,
right? Yeah, I gotcha.
So, but that's I think that's the hard part. That's why I say billing is always the most difficult.
Yeah, I hear billing a lot when it comes to certain professions, medicine, legal, lawyering.
Yep.
Like, do people fight a lot on their bills? Like you send me a bill for $5,000. How often does one say, hey, this is not right, or hey, you charged me too much, or I mean, certainly nobody's saying, hey, you didn't charge me nearly enough.
Sure.
You know,
I get that. That's for sure. No, at least in our particular area, we're very, very sensitive to billing because a lot in my area has to be approved by the court. So there's guidelines that are out there that the court suggests that you can't do certain things. So really don't get too much pushback on my billing. I am.
That might be in other types of other types of lawyering
Absolutely.
where I could
Yes.
see that happening. Because I know that's happened in the past, but maybe not in your. Okay, would you recommend being an attorney as a profession? Somebody that's in college right now maybe doesn't quite know what they want to do. They're taking career awareness, or they're in high school, or whatever it is. Would you recommend being a lawyer as a profession?
I would. I really enjoy what I do, but I would. I guess how I would qualify it is that you really have to fight for the area in which you're interested in doing, and that may mean you hold out for that. So, so if you go in with the passion, or if you just know you just enjoy reading and writing and possibly even arguing, you want to be a litigator or things of that nature, then when you go into court, you don't know when you go into law school, if you don't really know what area of practice, then you want to make sure that you take advantage of the summers and find clerkships and internships and volunteer opportunities that expose you to the various areas that you might be interested in.
Yeah, and it's a big swath too, because like if I was going to be like the difference between say an environmental lawyer and somebody that's doing the research side and car accidents, I mean it's going to be almost a 9-day job other than the terminology, right?
Well, I mean, what I always tell young students that are looking at going to law school is that the law touches everything. There's not one business, not one individual's livelihood that you can tell me is not touched by the law. So, I had classmates, there was classmates that went into the military and were JAG officers, right? There's Judge Advocate General, so there are attorneys that are in the military courts.
Oh, wow.
And then, I had one fellow that went to pharmaceuticals, and he was responsible and in charge of all of the studies to get, FDA approval of certain pharmaceuticals. You don't know where the law takes you. I know I had.
Well, think of all these tech companies.
Yeah, well, I had a couple of classmates that their primary language, one was Chinese and one was Japanese. So can you imagine going through law school, not just learning all that you have to learn through all these cases and reading, hundreds of pages every day, but you're also learning English, right? So they just impressed me, but their bend was just as you were suggesting, international law and trade and all that goes along with that. You hear a lot the political season right now. I've heard tariffs. You think about who writes those tariffs, who comes up with the laws, who writes all the agreements that imposes NAFTA or some of the other things that you've heard,
Well, that's another thing too, is lawyering is almost a prerequisite for going into politics too. If that was someone's chosen field, I mean, it's not all the way, but 9 out of 10 or some huge amount.
It's actually, that's interesting that you say that, because I think it's been within the last 5 to 10 years where the House went from the majority of lawyers under under the majority, under
Oh, wow.
50%. It was recent
Wow,
for the first time in the
That's
country's
interesting.
history. So,
wow.
so you're seeing that, and I count that as a good thing because I think that politics and certainly those, Congress and the Senate were designed to be of
Well,
ordinary people.
Well,
I mean,
right,
you can't.
right.
I mean, you have
And
to.
we're an ordinary people, and we're out of the ordinary, so this is perfect. Good job, dude. Nice
Yeah.
plug for me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
So, dang, you stole my thunder. I was going to hit you with a lawyer joke because I've got the attorney here. Okay, so I'm going to hit you with one anyways, but yours was
Okay.
better, dang it.
All right.
Okay, what type of clothing do attorneys like to wear?
I don't know what type.
Lawsuits.
Ah, there you go.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.